to talk about Shepenwepet again, follow up some of the things we did that we talked about the last time. So I'll go ahead and go live. I hope that you're having a good day. God bless you. I hope that all is going well for you. And I want to talk about Amenirdis today, and about Shepenwepet II. I want to talk a little bit more about these two women who were significant people in ancient Kemet during around the 7th century BC. So the 600s BC, the 700s BC, they were significant people in ancient Kemet. And I want to talk a little bit more about them, and I'll kind of put some things of it just so you can kind of get an idea and see, because we'll refer to a couple more things that we're talking about with respect to them. And once again, I'll ask you just to share this, like this information. But these women were Nubian priestesses. They were priestesses at the temple of Karnak, which you see right here, which is a huge complex, probably the largest, the biggest religious complex in the world at the time. And it still is a significant place when you just look at the size of it, but probably the biggest religious complex in the world at the time. They were priestesses of it. This is Shepenwepet II, and her aunt, who was Amenirdis, was also a priestess, and you'll see that she is. There were people that I want to talk about that speak more to what they were and what they were doing that you could look up. So I like sharing things that people can read. This is not just about me, sharing information that you can just see. I want you to kind of follow up, because once you know the information for yourself, you'll know it. And there's so many people that have contributed so many wonderful things. As I see, in the comments and things people have been doing, there's so many wonderful things that people have committed to over the past couple of days we've been doing this. I wanted to kind of share some more about these two women. So Amenirdis, she is someone who was the predecessor of Shepenwepet II. And they were, as I mentioned, God's wife of Amen. And I'll kind of give you some time frame of what we're talking about. Like what time period are we talking about as we talk about these two women? What we're talking about right up here, we're talking about the late period, if you will. So we're talking about the 700s BC, the 600s BC, the time when the ancient Kushite people were in control. They were an empire, and they control ancient Kemet. So Kemet became an empire under Kushite control. Well, at that time, they did a lot to elevate the role of the chief priestess at the temple at Karnak. And they put in place their family members. And this was this was something that was done regularly. If you were the king at this time and you were controlling ancient Kemet, you were controlling something that you put in place people who were related to you, because they were the ones who were praying on your behalf. They were the ones who were representing God and being a consort, if you will, of God, and a connection to the king. So having either your daughter or somebody very, very close to you, if you were king, being essentially in charge of the temple of Karnak. So they had so much power, so much significance, so much land, so many resources that were given them, even given to them by priests, even given to them by other temples across the whole land of Kemet. This is the type of wealth and power that these women commanded. And so as we think about that, there's more that we can delve into as we kind of talk about that and jump into it. And we kind of talk about that. One of the things I wanted to kind of mention was one of the stewards of Shepenwepet II. So one of the stewards of his name is Harwa. And there are a couple of different people. So Shepenwepet II, her steward's name is Akhamenru. So this is actually Akhamenru, and her aunt steward was named Harwa. So her aunt steward was named Harwa, and her steward was named Akhamenru. So when you think about it, if you get a chance to look up Harwa, you can look up Harwa and just literally, this is literally how it's spelled right here, Harwa. You can look him up, and he's going to be somebody you could find statues of. They have block statues of him, and I believe in the British Museum and the Berlin Museum, you can actually look up and find out who this man was. And as we kind of get our picture as to how they're related to one another, I'll kind of pull up this PDF that's available to members. You can see right here, just to remind you and to let you know, Kashta was the Kushite king, the Nubian king, who helped to extend Kush's rule into Kemet. He helped to extend it up through Lower Nubia, going into southern Kemet. And they were frankly, in charge. And when Pianki, his son, did more to extend Kushite's rule all the way up to the Delta, taking over Memphis, he was welcome. The southern part of Kemet, the upper people in Upper Kemet, the people in the temple of Karnak were asking essentially for her dad to come in and to take over. And they basically said, you are in control of this place. You are the person who is a strong hand. You are basically our leader. Come take over this part, because there's some people from the north trying to attack us. So that's where Kashta fits in. He's the leader of that family, and his father's name Alar. And then his son is Pianki, and his daughter is Amenirdis. And Amenirdis is someone who, as I mentioned, you can find out information about it. So it's not just talk about, you can find out. So if you want to go look up somebody who relates to her, look up Harwa right here. Harwa is a steward. He was an assistant of Amenirdis. He was somebody who was, her chief steward, someone who took care of her, who took care of her needs, attended to her. A lot of times we talk about these things in ancient history, but we don't talk about them relative to women. A lot of times we'll show men in powerful positions and we'll show people who supported them. So like I was thinking about the movie 9 to 5 because I heard that song recently. And as I was thinking about that movie, I thought about the fact that, the women were secretaries and basically were kind of stomped on and treated badly by their boss in that movie. They were kind of stomped on, looked down upon. We always talk about women who support men in a quote unquote secretarial role, and we'll give them those titles, but we don't talk about it when you have powerful women who have men who are supporting them. And that's exactly what was in the case with Amenirdis as well as with Shepenwepet II. And the man you see right here is her steward, was her chief steward. And his name is Akhamenru, and you can look him up as well. So not only can you look up Harwa and kind of study him, you can also look up Akhamenru and look up him and find out about him, because he is also somebody who this is a picture of him, this is a depiction of him, and he was her chief assistant, chief steward, if you will, chief official, who kind of looked after the things under her guard, under her watch, and her direction. You can look them up and start to hear about them. You can see what they say about you. You can read a little bit about them. You can find that these were real people. And as I started to read more about Harwa and his relationship with Amenirdis, I started to see various things that he talked about with respect to her. Various things with respect to her being given the title of God's hand. Not only was she God's consort, a queen, as Harold Morris mentions. Thank you so much for your comments on that. Really a queen and a queenship. But also one of the titles, one of the comments was that they were God's hand. And I thought about that. Imagine referring to somebody. Imagine someone having significant things that they're doing, having significant roles that they play. And that one of the roles as a priestess, as chief priestess here at the Temple of Karnak, one of the roles she would be called would be God's hand, literally God's doer. The person who's really an extension of God. Imagine you being God's hand. And I start to think about, they have references to Osiris, references to Asar, references to, like I said, being God's hand, references to being a representation of God. And when you think about those who were not only priestesses of Amen, but also those who were Heteru and priestesses and Hathor priestesses, they were embodiments of God's divine principle, that which brought forth the kingship, that which brought forth life into the world, that which brought forth prosperity and peace. They represented that for many people. So it's not just a matter of overlooking them. It really is something that you can dig into and you can research and find out more about them. So I wanted to give you the names so that you can find about some of these people who were alive at this time. As I mentioned, during the 7th century BC, 8th century BC, alive during that late period when the Kushites were in control, and what they were doing, what they were talking about. So as I talk about that, and I think about that, I want to make sure I mention and remember that you can look up Harwa, and he was a steward to Amenirdis, and Amenirdis was Shepenwepet's aunt. So you can kind of see where that relationship comes from. She was the sister of Pianki, the daughter of Kashta, and the aunt, if you will, Shepenwepet II was her niece. And obviously this is Shepenwepet II right here. So she was her niece. And so they begin to have a significant role at the Temple of Karnak, where they're essentially running the show, running things, and have a lot of resources at their disposal, as well as people. And the people that we mentioned, and the people whose names we mentioned, like Harwa, are people I think we should be significant, that we should remember their names, and we shouldn't overlook them. So as you start your studies, or you start to think you want to dig into more about this, and you want to figure out what's going on with respect to the temple at Karnak and some important names to know in that 7th and 8th century BC. Look up Shepenwepet II, take a look at Harwa, and look at their relationship and how they are discussed as being God's representatives, being God's hands, if you will. So I just wanted to share that. I thank you so much for listening. I hope you be able to join me the next time. We're going to talk a little bit more about the extensive career and history, if you will, of ancient Kemet itself. So thank you so much for listening. God bless you. I hope you have a good day.